Are you a woman in the military thinking about transitioning to civilian life? In this video, I am interviewing a friend and fellow veteran, Rick Longnecker, who had retired 4 years ago after serving 24 years in the United States Air Force. He is going to share with you the most important thing he did while in the military to help prepare him for his retirement, when he recommends that military members start planning for their separation, and his experiences with getting help, both while active duty and his experiences with VA healthcare. Hi, I'm Kara, and this channel is all about helping you learn how to transition out of the military into civilian working mom life successfully. If you are new here, give this video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. I do release a new video every week that will help you reach your full potential, even if you're a military woman juggling it all. Rick, thank you so much for coming on today. I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, good afternoon. I am Rick Longnecker. I spent 24 years in the Air Force. I retired 4 years ago. The first several years of my career, I was an all-source intelligence analyst, and then the last 7 years, I was a first sergeant. After spending about the last 4 years in the civilian employment, I am now fully retired and living the retired life.
I bet you are loving it. And I bet some of the people who are active duty watching this that are men are going to absolutely love that beard of yours.
I wish the rest of it was still there.
Yeah, you want to share what happened to it?
Yeah, I had to cut about 8 inches off of it a few weeks ago because I got some sparks in it when I was doing some metalworking and burned a big chunk right out of the middle.
Oh, that's so awful. But I am glad that you were still okay and you were able to salvage the rest of your beard, because that would have been probably really traumatic for you.
Probably.
All right. My first question for you is, what was the most important thing that you did while in the military to help prepare you for your retirement?
So you bring me on here and act like I did a lot of things to prepare for retirement, but I may be an example of what not to do versus an example of what to do. But the one big thing that I did was probably about 6 years before retirement, I made a concerted effort to get myself out of debt as quickly as possible. I had made some poor financial decisions, maybe some poor marriage decisions, and ended up with a significant amount of debt. And I spent the last 6 years in working very hard to knock that out. And then probably within about a year of actual retirement, I became completely debt free except for a mortgage. So that was my big thing that I did right.
Well, that is awesome. Congratulations on the debt free. And I honestly think a lot of military members are going to be able to relate to having debt. I don't think that that's something that is uncommon and something that really we could all benefit from doing immediately as soon as we realize there's a problem, right? Or even beforehand.
Absolutely. I would say if I could go all the way back in time, I would do everything I could to stay out of debt. But obviously we can't do that. So the key is to, as soon as you figure out that it is a problem, work on a plan.
I remember you and I talking before, and you had also mentioned that one of the things that helped you was networking and building that network. So do you want to touch on that just for a few minutes?
Absolutely. So when I retired, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I basically had a plan of generally where I didn't want to live and knew that I needed a job. And what amazed me through the whole process of applying for jobs and sending out resumes and all the things that you do when you retire is that every interview I got and every job offer I got came from either someone that I knew or a friend of a friend type of deal. I had no idea the importance of that network, and not necessarily even a deliberate network. It was, one of the job offers I got was a friend of a previous boss, and my boss and I were in the truck driving, and he's like, "What are you going to do when you retire?" I said, "I don't know, find a job." And he's like, "Hey, you need to call my buddy. Here's his number." And so I did a little research, figured out the company, and after working with them, talking to them for a while, ended up with a pretty decent job offer, but I fortunately already had something pretty good going, so passed on that.
Yeah, I am just now, I guess I would say, unfortunately, but fortunately, learning about the power of networking. And one of the resources that I just discovered to actually use is LinkedIn. I'd had a LinkedIn account for a while and wasn't doing anything with it. But then I learned that the military actually offers the free premium account for veterans for a year. I did just do a video on that. So if you haven't seen that, please check that out. But it is a great place to reach out to other veterans and veteran friendly companies. So be sure to check that out. I don't know about you, Rick, but I thought when I transitioned out, I found it to be very lonely at first, because once you're out, like you're out, even though you have all the military friends and family, it's just a different kind of feeling. But once you discover these communities out there, you can actually kind of get some of that connection back. So that's just something I wanted to share with everyone.
No, I think, yeah, and I think it's real easy to fall into that, being alone. And, I retired and stayed in the local area where I retired for a few years. And even then, it's the military. So everybody's transient. So all of my friends left and I stayed, and, I wasn't on base every day. I had full-time jobs. So, making those connections were kind of difficult. And then I packed up and moved to the middle of nowhere where there isn't a military base. And I'm actually finding that harder now than before to make those connections and do that, and those online networking, which is kind of counter to my personality. I'm very much an in person, but that online network is where I've been finding that connection piece. So I think do what you can to build your network.
Yeah. And, COVID too, I mean, there was a lot more in-person stuff. And then we had to learn to pivot to, primarily online. And at some point, I mean, I think it's already opening back up and everything, but there's still a lot of organizations that are now only doing online um, stuff. So part
Right.
of it's just a new way of life. So my next question, you kind of already answered it, but just to say again, when do you think is the best time for people to start planning for their retirement?
Well, and I think I hit it. I didn't do much planning, but if I had it to do over again, the day you enlist is the day you should start planning for separation or retirement. And then I will add, stumbling through life hoping to get lucky is not a strategy. Um, that's basically what I did pretty much my entire career, and post retirement as well. And luckily for me, I did get lucky in a lot of avenues. But if I had it to do over again, I would go back and be deliberate in that planning, start as early as I could, on all aspects of life, and preparing for retirement or separation, because we hear it all throughout our career, and it's usually from old guys like me that are right on the end going, this is not going to last forever. You're going to have to leave at some point, and you need to be ready for that. And I wasn't. I think I was holding out hope that I was going to promote that one last time and be able to stay a couple more years, and it didn't happen. And then, here I am. Oh, I'm gone in 6 months. I guess I better figure some stuff out. So, but yeah, as quickly as you can start planning, start planning.
Yeah. And I think another reason is because we never know what life is going to throw at us, what curveballs might come our way. A planned retirement and a planned separation are one thing, but sometimes things happen unexpectedly. And I would say that's another reason to plan, to always have your plan A and your plan B, and maybe even your plan C. And I know you probably saw that a lot with different airmen that you worked with as a first sergeant.
Absolutely, probably more often than I would even care to think about. But and the easy one is disciplinary stuff, but the piece that none of us plan for is you know medical issues cause of course a medical retirement or medical separation. I saw that a lot, and those people were not ready. They're wherever in their career, 6 years, 14 years, and all of a sudden, you know oh no, wait, I've got 6 more years till I can retire. I don't need to do all this. And hey, you know what? Now it's going to be in the next few months. and not prepared, not ready. So I think that just kind of hits home. The sooner you start planning, the better you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So you and I both know there is a lot of stigma out there about getting help, whether it's physical help or mental help, always concerned about kind of what that's going to do to your career. Could you speak to the audience about your experiences with healthcare, both mentally and physically, while you were active duty, as well as now that you're enrolled in VA healthcare?
I can, and this is one that I will try to keep short in the name of keeping this video under, an hour. But I was pretty much your typical enlisted member. You don't go to the doc unless you're dying because you're going to end up on a profile. You're going to let your team down. It's just a pain to jump through all the hoops of getting any kind of health care, so you don't go. Throughout my career, I had enough injuries that forced me to go. That I had a little bit of stuff in my records, but bottom line is we're masters of just sucking it up and pushing on. I think there's probably a culture of not going to the doc unless you're on your deathbed or you're broken, and I think that culture comes from a number of places that we probably don't need to go down that rabbit trail. But at the end of the day, as I look back on that particular aspect and I wonder what I could have done better. I think if I had gone, I think about, so I've had lots of knee issues. And, I would go to the doc once a year and say my knee hurts. And the doc would go, okay, well, you have to start with x-rays. And so we go do x-rays. Yeah, whatever. Okay, now you have to do 6 months of physical therapy. Well, I don't have the time for that. The scheduling never works out. It's a pain. So you don't go. Well, so the healthcare system says, oh, well, they must be fine. And then, a year later, I go to the doc with my list and go, my knees hurt. And you just repeat that for 24 years because that's basically what I did. What I should have done was gone to all of my physical therapy appointments and pushed the issue. I had chronic shoulder dislocations for like 14 years and just dealt with it. And then lo and behold, it got to where it just fell out whenever it wanted to. And I ended up at the emergency room 3 times in a month at a cost of almost 30 grand. And imagine this, they sent me to a specialist and I got my shoulder fixed. I should have been pushing that. I should have been fighting my own fights and not just, stumbling through the system. So on the physical side, I think that's where I was. That's where I think just about everybody out there is. I didn't want to be on profile. I love my teammates and we had an important job to do. And if I'm out of the fight, then, they have to pick up the slack. And so I just didn't go. That, and I was inherently lazy and dealing with the system was a pain. So on the physical side, that's important. And then I think when you get to the mental health side, it's even harder. And I think there's a whole lot more stigma there, for a number of reasons that we could talk about for hours. But bottom line is, when my shoulder dislocated, everybody could tell something was wrong. But when I was struggling from a mental health perspective, maybe some people could tell, but generally you couldn't. So a little bit, and once again, I am probably a great example of what not to do. Early on in my career, probably about midway through my career, I had some real serious struggles, and I managed to find my way into getting some help through a friend and then through a non-official channel. And I'm not going to jump up and down and say that's the way to go, but I had all the same fears that everybody else had. I had a very high security clearance, and if you walk into mental health, you're going to lose your clearance. That's what I had always heard. I didn't want to lose job opportunities or career opportunities or all of that. And I just overall didn't want people to know that I had, that I was struggling, that I was, I'm going to do air quotes, weak, or, whatever it is that keeps us from going to the doc to get our mental health fixed. But fortunately, I was able to find that help that I needed, and then over the years that made me a little more comfortable. And then went through some marriage counseling, and while that didn't help with my marriage, it sure did help with me. And that particular mental health professional, I think probably realized that it was a lost cause, and she spent quite a bit of time helping me, and at least helping me identify where I was struggling and give me some tools to put in my toolbox. And then as I went through my career and became a first sergeant, that was kind of, my career dream. So at that point, I had achieved what I wanted to achieve. And I realized in that job that putting yourself on a pedestal wasn't the way to go. Being real and practicing what you preached was more important than about anything else. And so I found myself, in the office of a mental health professional more than once. And then over time, kind of realized that, sitting in that waiting room waiting for your appointment was a good thing, because there's a whole lot of young people in there that are, not real comfortable being there and are scared to death. And they look over and here's this, person from leadership that they may or may not know sitting there, and I'm like, okay, well, let me start doing this then. And then at that point, I don't want to say I didn't have anything to lose, but I pretty much realized they weren't going to take my clearance and they weren't going to take my dream away. So there was nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. And I think you probably also, because you had so many airmen that you were taking over there pretty consistently, you also got to see through their experiences, that it was a safe place for them to go.
No, absolutely. And I think, thank you for bringing that back, because that was the point I missed, which was, very rarely was there ever a cost to, clearances or career opportunities or anything like that of the probably, without exaggeration, hundreds of young people that I helped go find that mental health or watched them go through the process. So, but, it takes, for somebody like me, it takes seeing that with your own eyes and believing it. And then, like I said, at some point just going, hey, you know what, there's nothing wrong with this. So, and then to I guess, I think finish the last point there was the VA healthcare. So I've been out 4 years now. I pretty much exclusively see the VA for my healthcare, and probably a toss up between the VA clinics and your typical military treatment facility. I live in a small town and we have a small clinic, and they are fantastic. I lived in a bigger city with a bigger facility. It was a full-on medical center, and probably not quite as good as the little one, but they had more services. But once again, it's back to, I have to fight for it. They're not gonna, they're not gonna go out of their way to spend money on me. I need to go in there and jump up and down on the desk. Our little clinic here in town is fantastic. They fight for me some. I recently have been in a huge fight just trying to get supplies for one of my medical devices, and it's taken months and months and months, and I finally got it, and it's still not right. But that, a lot of that is other issues, supply chain and whatever else, but fight for yourself through the whole process.
Yeah. Do you want to touch on just a little bit? I know there's also some stigma out there about even filing a VA claim. So if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. I went through that. So I filed my claim. One of the benefits of the job I had was I got to watch that process quite a bit and help people through it. So I filed my claim and, just kind of let the cards fall where they would. And when I got my rating, which was significantly higher than I thought it would be, I went through probably the typical emotions that you go through. I don't deserve this. No, I feel like I'm scamming the system. All of those, just pick your reaction. But as I started to let it set in, and I gave a lot of myself, both physically and mentally, to 24 years, and this is the VA's way of paying me for what I gave. And what I'm realizing every day is some of these long-term injuries don't get any better. I'm not getting around any better. I'm not getting around better than I was when I retired. It's not easier to get out of bed, and that's going to continue, to decline forever. So you may feel great today, but it's not always going to be that way. And let those emotions run their course, but keep in mind that it is about you and your future. So do what you can to set yourself up for that.
Yeah, and definitely it's a benefit you earned because you signed your name on the dotted line. So take advantage of those benefits that you are entitled to, and don't worry, they won't give it to you if they don't think you deserve it. So there's some
Absolutely.
there's some things you think you may deserve, and they're like, nope, not that one, not that medical condition. But yeah, any other thoughts that you would like to share with members who might be out, whether they're separating or retiring?
You know, I think figuring out what you want to do is where you need to start. I didn't do that. You know, when anybody asked me what I was going to do when I retired, I said, get a job. You know, and I think there's a balance there between I'm going to get a job, which is what I said, and I'm going to do this exact job in this location, you know, which is great if that's available, but it may not be available. So for me, I kind of always wanted to live, you know, where I live now. And so it was about how do I get there? And, you know, the opportunity to enter into very early retirement presented itself, and I tried it for a little while. And then I let myself get talked into going back to work. And then I realized that, you know, this is what I want to do. So what do you want to do? And then how do you get there? That's, I think, what I would, and the sooner you can figure that out and start down that path and start setting goals and all the stuff that you need to do to get there, the better off you'll be.
Absolutely. As you and I were talking about earlier, it's about like, figuring out who do I want to be when I grow up. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a career, but just who is it I want to be as a person? Well, thank you so much for your interview today. I know a lot of people are going to benefit from it. As I always say, dream the possible. If you dream the possible, you can make anything happen. And for that reason, I'll see you in the next video.